Because my Saturn is in my 7th house, my Saturn return was about relationships, enemies, contracts, interpersonal style. I thought it would be a good idea to go through and talk about what I experienced in these areas as a way to just document it for myself, maybe for my next Saturn return, or anyone that might also be having their Saturn return in the 7th house. So let's start with relationships. Everyone says that if you have Saturn in your 7th house, you should not get married before your Saturn return. I was a foolish one who did that because I didn't know anything about astrology, and I got married very young. That marriage did end in divorce, and I'm not mad about it. So I guess what they say is true, is if you get married before your Saturn return, it's probably going to end in divorce. Mine definitely did, and like I said, I'm more than okay with it. That being said, I also started a relationship around the time that Saturn was entering Pisces. I don't remember exactly. I'm still in a relationship with that person. That person is a Pisces, so that's funny because my 7th house is in Pisces. And I will say that our relationship definitely had some struggles at the beginning, but they were mostly external to us. And in so many ways, it's brought us so close together. A big part of our relationship during my Saturn return was about learning to have conflicts and have it healthily to bring us closer together. We've handled them very maturely. So shout out to Saturn for that. Now, another 7th house theme is contracts, and I will say that I also had some drama around contracts. In this contract, I found myself being really flexible, but when I needed flexibility, I noticed it wasn't being returned. So it ended up being like very unbalanced. I was overgiving in ways that was causing trouble in my own life. I had to be a bit more strict, not because I wanted to be strict for the sake of being strict, but I found that I was giving out of proportion. I definitely was learning how to not feeling guilty about honoring the contract for what the contract was. That's like a major theme throughout my Saturn return, giving out of proportion. I also signed a contract, you know, like when you go to grad school, you sign contracts, and I'm really desperate to get out of the state of Texas because I did not want to be there anymore. Because of that, when that offer came to me, I accepted it, and I really shouldn't have. I learned from this contract just to not be so hasty and so desperate. It was going to come back and bite me in the butt. It wasn't a good experience. I didn't even finish my degree. I'll probably finish it later. It's never good to sign a contract under desperation, and that was definitely a lesson I had to learn the hard way. Now, open enemies. This is another theme. I definitely had open enemies. I had some people who made it very clear that they were my enemies. Some people are mean on purpose, and they don't like it when you bring it up. And that's something that I really learned about open enemies, because I was under the impression that sometimes people are like unkind and mean, but if you let them know, that they would be like, oh, I get it, I see. Some people actually like just double down and get meaner, more unkind. And I'm not saying people should change their behavior based on what I think, but I also realized that, you know, connecting, like I said, is about navigating conflict, and navigating conflict is not for everyone. So, but if I had to give it an empowered spin, which is usually how I like to operate, I basically learned how to spot a bully, how to spot an enemy. And like in hindsight, I've had them my whole life, like we all do, but this is a time when I became very clear about what an enemy looks like, and I found so many of them within my own friendship circles. So back to relationships, one of the biggest shifts that I had was actually in my friendships more than like romantic relationships like everyone thinks about. I found myself actually backing away from so many of my friendships. And the really good thing about this, again, this like empowered approach, is that good friendship I was giving to others, I actually gave to myself. I was more proud of the things that I was doing as I turned my energy back to myself. And I was like taking inventory, and before I was giving away so much of my life and so much of my day to my friends and getting like very little in return. And I wasn't doing it for return, but you know, just having that realization made me realize like I was kind of spending my life being a supporting character to all of my friends and just not getting the same back. There were a couple of times where I was like, I want to make more friends. As I was getting out there, I was realizing that I was a lot different than I had known myself to be. I'd always known myself to be like very friendly, but like throughout my Saturn return, I actually found out I'm maybe more reserved than I think I had made space for. It takes me a long time to feel connected and safe with people, and I'm now at this place where I just kind of make peace with it. It takes me a long time to feel safe enough to call someone my friend, really. I think people tend to feel connected to me before I can feel connected to them. And in that, because it takes me so long to feel safe and connected with people, I realized that the other people feeling connected to me and me not feeling connected to them was causing some offense even within like my new friends, because they thought we should be closer than I was ready to feel. So I'm Saturn in my 7th. I'm a slow mover. I'm also very clear on what I want in friendship now. When it comes to my interpersonal style, I had rose-colored glasses on. I treated everyone the same. I always assumed that everyone else was doing the same. I know it's like very naive and very silly. I just realized I'm a lot slower because I'm incredibly idealistic, and I don't hate myself for either of those things. It's definitely something that I had to like come to terms with and realize for myself. So at the beginning of my Saturn return, I remember feeling like I wanted more like in my life. I felt like I was surrounded by love, by my friends and my family. It was almost clinical, like it lacked warmth, it lacked the curiosity. So I spent the beginning of my Saturn return really pursuing like in my life. And what I learned overall is that the people who love you also like you. The people that like you don't always love you, but for me, like will always be more important, because like is like that curiosity and that enjoyment and people like delighting in you. And although love is important, I realized for me that love without like just simply isn't love. So my phone died, so I'm gonna wrap this up. I just put it on the charger to finish this, and I will say that overall my Saturn return was not too bad. Even in the enemies portion, I definitely feel like I learned a lot about life. I feel like I understand how to approach enemy and stay sane, and I think that that's a pretty empowering experience. I definitely learned how I want to connect and desire to connect, at least for the next chapter of my life, and I feel very fulfilled in my very few friendships and great romantic relationship, and I really couldn't ask for much more. More than anything, I feel more connected to myself than I've ever felt, and I know it's because I got really clear on like what I needed in relationships, because I had to acknowledge myself. Anyway, I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I hope that this has been helpful. And if you want me to expand on any more of my Saturn return, I definitely can. Comment, and maybe I'll make like a video about one particular section or something like that. So have a great rest of your day. Bye.